Welcome back to the Cap Report, y'all. I hope y'all are doing well. I'm doing great. I just hit a new max on my bench, so I'm feeling really good right now. I'm trying to record this video. Everyone in my house is asleep, so I'm hoping I'm not going to be too loud for them, but I don't want to be too quiet for y'all either. But I wanted to give a shot at a full recap video, so we're going to do a full card recap of UFC Fight Night 98, Brandon Royval versus Taira. I'm a little late on this one, but nonetheless, we're going to get it done anyway. Pretty solid card, nothing like groundbreaking, but the main event lived up to the hype, I feel like. There wasn't a lot of hype around it, but the main event was really good, and there was some really fun fights. On the prelims, there was a couple decisions watching back that you're like, oh, do I have to watch through this? But yeah, we'll go ahead and get through it all. In the main event, we have Brandon Royval, who found a split decision win over Taira. Great main event, back and forth, a close fight. Both guys got pushed to the edge at points. I scored it Royval 48-47 watching it. I got cut from work, so I was able to at least watch the main event as it happened. I gave him rounds 1, 3, and 5. Round 1, a little slow initially. Both guys kind of finding their range, but Royval was getting the better of the striking. Taira found a late takedown, and Royval was kind of looking for a few different submissions, but I gave Royval the first. In round 2, Taira timed a great takedown, dipping under Royval's strikes, and controlled the round from there. He found the body triangle, and Royval did so much to get out, but Taira always just seemed to be a step or two ahead of him. Taira was pretty active from the position, looking for submissions, mixing some strikes here and there. In the third round, Royval kind of took over a bit. He was able to stuck a takedown against the fence early. He landed a ton of shots on Taira. I actually thought the ref might call it a few times. There were points where, Taira's gassed. Royval's unloading punches on him. Taira's failing a takedown and just clinging to Royval. But Taira was able to kind of gas a little bit, but he was able to recover. He was able to get one more takedown attempt off that was effective initially, but Royval was able to reverse the position somewhat. Royval timed a knee at one point on Taira. It was a bit back and forth for the last 90 seconds of the round. Royval takes Taira's back, looks for an armbar. Taira escapes, finds Royval's back, finished the round with Royval kind of outlasting a rear naked choke attempt from Taira. Round 4, Taira finds Royval's back again. He's got the body triangle, and he controlled the round. Not a lot of strikes. Taira was looking for submissions. Royval worked a lot trying to get back to his feet, but he just couldn't. Props for him to be in that position for so long and not get finished. Round 5, I really think showed the experience gap between these two fighters. Royval started the round landing some nice combinations. Taira landed back some shots as well. Had another takedown attempt. Taira looked for the back with Royval's back against the cage. Royval fought position, getting his back to the mat while walking and getting himself out of the position. He ended up reversing it and getting Taira's back against the cage. Royval made adjustments his coaches asked for in the corner before the 5th. He defended another takedown, pulled a guillotine off of another takedown attempt, rolled into mount, and found a body triangle, securing the round for Royval in the end. But yeah, great fight. A really solid win for Royval. This should put him next in line for the title shot. It's disappointing to see Taira lose, but he's going to get invaluable experience from this. I said this would decide if he belonged in the elite of the division, and although there's room for growth in this game, I think you can definitely say he is in the elite of this division now. Based on the UFC announcing Pantoja Asakura versus this fight, right before this card, I do think they were trying to lay the groundwork to an Kai Asakura Taira title fight. With Taira losing, it didn't really go their way, but I'll touch more on this in an upcoming video. I don't think at this point you can't avoid Royval. I get in the moment, not giving this next title shot to Royval considering his past losses to Pantoja, but I do think following this result, no matter who wins the title fight, whether it's Pantoja or not, I think you have to give it to Royval. In terms of the division, he has the most relevant wins, the best wins, and he's on the best streak to have another title shot. I also think this is another reason I love MMA over boxing, right? The fact that Taira lost here, but there's so much that he gained from it, and his career is not going to be ruined, right? Obviously, in boxing, you can lose a little bit, but they focus so much on the clean records now. I think that you get a lot of guys who you don't get a lot of the fights you want, and you lose out on a lot of guys growing through losses. And I think that this, as I said, I think this is an invaluable experience for Taira. I think that he's going to learn so much. He's going to see where he can see that his BJJ game is already there to the point where he's above guys in this level of the division, and he's just got to develop his striking a lot more. And I think once he can get that up, there's no reason he can't be a champion. But yeah, all things considered, great fight. I think both guys got a lot out of this fight, and I'm excited to see where the future in flyweight goes from here. And so we move on to the co-main event: Brad Tavares versus Jung Young Park. Jung Young Park defeats Brad Tavares by a split decision. Brad Tavares found a really quick knockdown in round 1. He caught Park with a straight while Park was kind of off balance throwing a leg kick, and it looked like he was trying to make quick work of the opportunity. He chased him down to the ground. He found Park's back. Within a minute of the first round, he was chasing a rear naked choke, but Tavares really couldn't capitalize on the situation. About 20 seconds later, Park found his way back to the feet. Park recovered well, pressuring Tavares heavily and cutting off the octagon. Both guys landing for the rest of the round, but Park more for sure. Actually, I think for round 1, Park's recovery really made that round close, but I'd still give it to Tavares off the knockdown. Park started off round 2 strong, got a body kick, took Tavares down. Tavares got the back up once again, smothered him with pressure, pushing him against the cage, landing often. The second half of the round, Tavares found a lot more space and was able to land effectively, but I thought Park was able to land pretty well with him as well, and I felt like it was a pretty solid round for Park. These guys came out swinging in round 3, Tavares really showing their urgency at first, Park matching it after that, standing in the pocket, landing with each other. Park landed a shot that sent Tavares kind of flying back into the cage. He would look for a takedown against the cage off of this, but was really struggling to finish it. I think about a minute later, he would get the takedown and find Tavares' back, but he wasn't really able to do too much with it. Landed a few strikes, looked for a rear naked choke, but really couldn't get much out of that position. But that being said, I gave Park the third round. I think he landed the more significant strikes, especially given, just the image, I guess, of sending, Tavares back against the cage from a strike. It does have a bit of a lasting effect in that regard. But yeah, a solid fight, a good win for the Iron Turtle. One judge gave Tavares a second, leading to a split decision, which I'm not too pressed about. I can kind of see it, but I do think Park did enough work in the earlier in that round to outdo Tavares to win the second. Pretty solid fight, nothing too special, but a solid co-main event. So in the feature fight, Chidi Njokuani defeated Jared Gooden by unanimous decision, all judges scoring at 30-27. Another dominant performance on the night. You'll see a couple of those. There's a very quick scramble initially where Gooden got Njokuani to the ground, but he got back up very quickly. So the vast majority of the first 2 rounds were just these two clinched against the fence, and Njokuani landing countless knees to the body, just consistently landing throughout the rounds. Gooden wasn't really doing anything back about it. Gooden he seemed to accept the position as he couldn't, and he really wouldn't. Well, maybe he could, but he wouldn't do anything to get out of being against the cage. After seeing Njokuani's range at the end of the second round, I can kind of understand why Gooden was okay being clinched up, but he did nothing in that position. So to me, I don't know what his plan was. It looked like he wasn't even trying to win the fight, And Gooden did have a good surge early in the third. He got the fight to the ground. He had a fight to keep it there. Eventually, Njokuani did get free. Gooden seemed to really struggle with the range disadvantage, and Njokuani rocked him a bit with a knee. He used the kicks to keep range for a little bit too. Gooden got unlucky with the follow through of a takedown late. You saw him give up mount. He did good to get out of that position and chase submissions, but it was all just too little too late. It was a good performance for Chidi Njokuani. He took what was given to him for a pretty easy win. He's up there in age for a run, but I think he has really good size and range for welterweight. I'll be interested to see who he ends up against next. He could make a little run at the rankings, but I don't think you're going to see him get to the elite of the division. Next up, we go to Grant Dawson versus Rafa Garcia, in which Grant Dawson defeated Rafa Garcia by second round TKO. Another dominant performance from Dawson. He had a good single leg in the first round. Garcia got up from it initially, but Dawson was able to chain wrestle forward and eventually got the fight to the ground. He just controlled the fight from there, landing solid ground and pound, keeping away Garcia from the cage. Round 2, Dawson got the fight to the ground again. Both rounds, Garcia didn't seem to show any urgency to get up at all, and Dawson upped the pressure and found a pretty easy finish. This is a pretty straightforward one. In both of those fights, you kind of wonder, the guy that lost was at a disadvantage, but you kind of have to wonder, why weren't they trying to do more? I understand the risk of losing, but you're already, projected to be the loser of the fight. You might as well, if you're going to lose, at least go out trying to get something versus just accepting the loss in such an easy way. Next up, we have Daniel Rodriguez versus Alex Morono, which Daniel Rodriguez defeated Alex Morono by split decision. I felt Morono took that first round. He landed more strikes. He landed more often, but more importantly, he landed the better ones and more damaging strikes. He found Rodriguez's chin quite often. Round 2, D-Rod made up for it. Some good adjustments in the striking, particularly defensively. He wasn't getting touched up nearly as much, and he was landing more effectively. Round 3, I think D-Rod kind of just took over the striking, and I can understand this one being a split decision, to be honest. I thought Morono won that first round. The second round was close, but I gave it to D-Rod. I can understand scoring it from Morono. The third round was definitely a D-Rod. He took over the striking in that round, but there's not a ton to say for this one either. Solid fight. It's cool to see D-Rod win. I don't see anything crazy coming in the future from either of these guys, considering their ages. I was surprised how fast Morono looked coming out of the gate, but, maybe my analysis was a little bit off, but it still ended up being right. D-Rod did kind of get faster later on. A good fight for what it was. Nothing too special there, though. So now we're going to go to the prelims. We had CJ Vergara versus Ramazan Tamirov, and Ramazan Tamirov got a first round TKO over CJ Vergara. What a statement win Tamirov laid out there. I feel like you could just see the energy bouncing off of him with each movement he had. He threw everything with lethal intentions, and when he finally landed, it had a huge effect. Pressured, looking to land the big shot throughout the round. Finally caught Vergara with the overhand left, dropping him. It was kind of interesting to see as he kind of faked to the body, threw his right, Vergara backed out, and he stepped forward, changing stances, landing the overhand left. From there, he was chasing Vergara down, trying to land the finish blow, eventually dropping him with a body shot when fully covered up. The finish almost kind of reminded me, not the finish, sorry, but the initial drop that he had kind of reminded me of Peter Yan a little bit with the stand switch combination. Tamirov looked great in that fight. Obviously, you're very low in the division, but I think that's a great way to kind of come into the organization and put your name on the map, right? Moving down the card, Jonathan Pierce versus Pat Sabatini. Pat Sabatini defeated Jonathan Pierce by first round submission. Sabatini stuffed and reversed a takedown attempt quickly. He found the body triangle. He lost a little bit later and then found it again and got a pretty easy rear naked choke to finish this one early. There really isn't too much to say about it. It was just a great performance by Sabatini. He just completely outmatched Jonathan Pierce in this one. Then Magrimbo defeated Nico Price by unanimous decision. Grimbo caught Price early on. I thought he was going to get a finish in the first 2 minutes. The way the fight started, he was clearly more powerful and faster striker, controlling the ground well too. There's not too much to say here. It was a really dominating performance by Magrimbo. 330-27 scorecards. He was a better fighter in pretty much every element of the fight in this one. I just wish he could have found a finish. Price seemed to be there just to get a paycheck and be a body to beat on, to be honest. It might be time for him. He's Nico Price is out here looking a little bit like a Celtic Shaq, you know what I mean? Next we move down to Junior Taffa versus Sean Sheriff, and Junior Taffa picks up a TKO win, second round over Sean Sheriff, and Taffa picks up a win, and that's really the most praise I can give him for this fight. As general with the heavyweights, there are a lot of big punches and some exchanges where, if any shot can end it. But beyond that, I don't think there's really too much to say. How are you the one on on a camp before this fight, and you gasped before the guy who stepped in on a week's notice. Tafa landed some good shots in the second. He found a finish, but even then, it felt like to me he didn't do the greatest. As I said, I know it was a short notice opponent for Tafa, but I don't know. I just feel like it was a really disappointing performance altogether. You couldn't put him out in the first. You gasped before him. He got taken down. He gave up his back almost instantaneously. More or less got saved by the bell. You know, I don't really see a very successful future at this weight class for Tafa. He'll have some just by the fact that it's, you know, it's the most shallow and talent-deprived division in the organization. You know, you're going to be able to beat up on some blobs, but I just don't see him being able to really reach and compete with the top of the division. Next up, we go Julia Pilastri versus Corey McKenna, in which Julia Pilastri defeated Corey McKenna by a split decision, and I'm not really sure what the judge who scored this fight to McKenna saw. I felt that the first two rounds were very clearly Pilastri rounds. All three judges had different scoring actually for this fight. I personally had it 30-27 to Pilastri, and I thought it was a really impressive performance by Pilastri on short notice. She really took control of this fight for much of the first two rounds. You know, McKenna shot very quickly for a takedown to start this fight. Pilastri defended it well in the first half of the round. They traded knees to the body and traded positions against the cage in the clinch. You know, they landed pretty evenly on a number of strikes, but I felt like Pilastri landed the heavier, more damaging shots. She looked to control the pressure and was the stronger, rangier fighter. It really made it difficult for McKenna to land her combinations. Round two, it felt like Pilastri just seemed to stylistically control the fight. She really just didn't let McKenna work her game at all. Controlled much of the round and again landed the more damaging strikes. Round three, McKenna was finally able to get the fight to the ground late after taking quite a bit of damage, and honestly, she couldn't get much done there. But to be fair, at that point, she had about 90 seconds to work with, so there wasn't a ton. You know, great performance by Julia Pilastri, and I thought she just absolutely dominated this fight. Next up, we go to Dan Argueta versus Corey Haddon, in which Corey Haddon defeated Dan Argueta by clear 30-27 decision. A great dominant performance for Cody Haddon in this one. He looked so calm and composed, handled all the possible stylistic counters to him. You know, it's a shame he couldn't find a finish. Just know following this fight, if Haddon is fighting, I will be there no matter what. Argueta, despite missing weight, he just seemed outmatched once Haddon was able to consistently stop the grappling and land at will. You know, not a terrible performance by any means. I'm impressed he didn't get finished. You know, I think his arm hitting the knee before his head might have saved him. And a pretty crazy pace for that first round. You know, great first round for Haddon. He was able to get back up after getting taken down. He defended many of the takedowns well. He didn't panic on the submission attempts. He grew in pressure and had great striking. And Argueta late into that round didn't look like he wanted to stand with Haddon. It seemed to be a bit overwhelmed by the pressure and trying to find his timing with the striking. And I thought it was cool to see Haddon mixing the grappling in the second round despite controlling the striking so well. And he did well trying to improve position, and Argueta gave up his back real easy. You know, and it's a bit surprising to see that the guy who wanted to get the fight to the ground gave up his back. But he did well to get out of the position. And then a crazy knee landed by Haddon, and as I said, I'm just shocked that Argueta survived that. Going into the third, great cardio from both these guys. Haddon continued to perform, landing great shots, great head movement, ripping to the body when clinched up. As I said, I haven't really praised Argueta that much. He did have a great low kick in that third, got Haddon off his feet. I'm excited to watch Cody Haddon again. That was a really fun performance. Probably the most standout performance to me outside of like the main event, outside of Brandon Royval and Taira. Cody Haddon's the name that I'm taking away from this card. I'm really excited to see what he can do in this division. And then finally, we get to the opener of the card, Clay Carpenter versus Lucas Hosha, in which Clayton Carpenter won by rear naked choke in round two. Carpenter lands a few body kicks, ducks under a punch from Hosha to get the fight to the ground. He was able to trap both of Hosha's legs, eventually causing Hosha to turn, give away his back, locking in the body triangle, and then making quick work to the rear naked choke. You know, a great performance by Carpenter. He proves to 8-0. Real fun fight while it was standing up in both rounds. Great takedowns from Carpenter. Dominated the ground and pound in the first round. Had a mix of damage, looking to improve position while maintaining dominant positions, clearly giving Carpenter that first round. Great timing on the doubles for Carpenter. His first and the second round wasn't great, but he found the second one really well and ultimately found a finishing position from it. Really fun fight. Solid performance from both guys. I thought it was a great way to open up the card. And I noticed that Clay Carpenter trains at the MMA lab, so you really got to tell Mario Batista that's what effective grappling looks like. That's what we want to see. We don't want to see you hold someone against the cage. That was my UFC Fight Night 98 recap. Definitely a process making this. I think I put too much emphasis on the later fights. Let me know if you watched the card what you thought. What do you think is in store for the future of Royval and Taira following this fight? Any thoughts you had on the card? Anything I said? Leave it in the comments below. As always, leave a like, subscribe if you haven't. Also, we hit 400 subscribers. Thank you guys so much. That one caught me off guard too. You know, I'm really appreciative of that. As I said, I'm just trying to keep consistent and hopefully put out some good videos for y'all and some interesting MMA content. So next video should be me talking about the UFC 310 announcements.